Hey everyone, this is Mukesh Utwani once again from learn-automation.com. In this video, we are going to talk about how you can execute your Playwright test using Jenkins. Now, if you're completely new to Playwright, then I would highly recommend you to watch this series. We started this series and I have covered almost 25 videos on this, right from the what is Playwright, how to download, how to continue. So I'm assuming that you must be familiar, but if you're not familiar with Playwright, I would highly recommend you to go through this playlist. Because right now, whatever test we have done, I have pushed already on my GitHub. So I will show you how you can run your Playwright test. Part 1 will be how you can test run locally. When I say locally, forget about the GitHub part for the time being. Suppose I have some tests on my local system which I want to run via Jenkins. Part 2, I will show you how you can pull the code from GitHub and run via Jenkins. And before we do that, I'm assuming that you must be familiar with what is Jenkins, how to configure everything. But if not, then I have another series on Jenkins as well, where I discuss again from the scratch what is Jenkins, how to download, install, configure and everything. So around 25-26 videos on Jenkins as well. So these are the two prerequisites. I'm assuming you're familiar with Playwright. You already have some tests locally or on GitHub. I'm using GitHub, but again, you can have any I will say repository. You can use Bitbucket, you can use Azure DevOps or any other cloud repository where your code is available. Okay, I'm using GitHub, but it could be anything. So I have everything in place. So I will show you how to create jobs, how to execute and how to execute with GitHub. I will be sending all these links in the description of this video. So in case if you want to directly copy paste and give a shot first, then do that. Then you can continue with your example. Throughout this, I will be using this documentation of Playwright. So this documentation is all about how you can integrate your Playwright test with CI tools. So they have mentioned how you can get started with GitHub Actions, Docker, Azure Pipeline, Circle, CI, Jenkins. What we are going to use is the Jenkins one. They have mentioned with the pipeline. So pipeline also you can do that. First one, I will show you how to run without pipeline as well. So let's go ahead and let's continue. So I already have lot of jobs and lot of views created. In your case, you might not have a view, so you can create a new view directly from this. Or if you have existing view, you can click on any view and let's create a new item. And before we do that, basically what I'm using Playwright with JavaScript. You might have Playwright with Java, Playwright with Python, Playwright with C#. So your tool will change, but how we run the test will remain the same. I'm using Node.js, but in case if you have a Java, Python and C#, the commands will change. In case if you're using Java, then definitely you will be using Maven or Gradle. If you're using Python, then you will be using PyTest, right? So let me create one first job, which is Playwright GitHub. This is one job which I'm creating, which is Playwright GitHub. And since I'm using JavaScript, right, make sure you have JavaScript installed. So in order to run JavaScript, you need to install Node.js. So before I do that, I will quickly check whether Node is properly configured or not. So at the time of recording, I'm using Node version 16.16.0, but let's say if you have latest version, there's no issue. Make sure you have Node.js 14 plus above. I'm using 16, so we are good to go. So I'm going to create one Playwright GitHub job and I'm going to create a freestyle project. I will click on the checkbox which is add to current view. So this is my repository which is under my account, Playwright demo. First I will clone this so that I can show you from the scratch. But before we do that, once you create a job, let's go ahead and first we will check whether it is able to pick the node or not. So I'm going to select one thing called execute Windows batch command. Now listen carefully. I'm using Windows for this example, so I'm using Windows batch command. But let's say if you're using Mac, if you're using Linux, then definitely you will be going with execute shell. Okay. For me, since I'm using Windows, I will go with Windows batch command. I will use node space -- version, right? The same command which I executed here. I should get this output, which is 16.16.0. So let me click on save. Let me build this. It will build. If it is able to execute my node -- version, I got 16.16.0. It means my Jenkins is configured with node. Now before we make any changes, let me clone this code. So I will go to my GitHub, click on this code, click on this copy URL to clipboard. So on my desktop, I have one folder created called PW code, which is Playwright code. And this is the empty folder right now. So let me clone this code first. In case you already have code, you don't need to clone. Since I was not having it, I cloned and I got this repository, which is Playwright demo. And I got the complete repository. So basically this repository have multiple examples. If you go with test examples, okay, this is the sample test which Playwright provides. And if you go to test folder, you will find many tests. So you can run single test, multiple tests, depends how many tests you want to run. For this example, I can take any test and I can execute. For example, I want to run this example.spec.js. Basically it have two tests. So test 1 is focusing on the title and test 2 is focusing whether this get started link is visible or not. So I already cloned this. This is what we got, right? Now I want to run this test. Now once your repository is cloned, now let's quickly execute certain commands and see how it works. So these are certain steps that you need to perform, and I will share all these steps one by one. So step number 1 is basically you need to run npm install. So what this command will do, if you go to this repository, you will notice you will have one package.json file. Okay. So in this JSON file, what you have, if you open this package.json file, this have basically the project information. So you can see your project name, version, description, right? Right now, I'm not using any specific command here. I will run everything using CLI commands that I will directly pass on the Jenkins, but you can put all the commands under this section as well. So basically you can create a test and you can mention all the commands here. This command will basically make sure all the dev dependencies that you have mentioned in your project is getting installed. So the moment you say npm install, it will install all these dev dependencies. So let's execute this. So I will go back to our job that we created. Click on configure. Now scroll down. So this is the command that we executed, right? Just to check whether everything is configured or not. Now what I need to tell Jenkins first, go to this particular directory, right? So I will type cd and I will give this location. Part 1 is basically make sure the Playwright test is running. Once you are comfortable with this, then we'll directly clone our GitHub repository. Once you move to this directory, then we are going to execute npm install. Now whatever commands I'm explaining you, either you can keep in one single Windows batch command, or you can create multiple. So let's say the first two steps, which is npx install Playwright and the npm install, I will keep under one. So npm install will will download all the dev dependencies. The second command, npx Playwright install, will install Playwright on this particular system. Right now I'm using Jenkins on my local system without any agent, but let's say you will be running this particular Playwright test on particular agent. You will be running all this command on the agent. Once this step is done, now we need to tell Jenkins that go to this folder, run this particular spec file, use this browser and use headed mode. So npx Playwright test will basically start running your test. This particular options tells Jenkins that go to test folder. In our case, all the tests are available inside tests folder. In this we are telling execute example.spec.js file. So basically it will run this particular spec.js file. Right now I want to run my test on Chrome, so I'm using --project Chromium. If you want to run on WebKit, if you want to run on Firefox, you can mention that. And by default, Playwright test will be running in the headless mode. I want to show you the execution part, so I'm mentioning --headed. Let's execute this command. So as I mentioned, you can keep all the commands inside one. To show you another part, I will create one more build step. I will say in execute Windows batch command, and I will mention this. Again, a small disclaimer, I'm using Windows as of now, so I'm using Windows batch command. But let's say Jenkins is running on Linux server or Jenkins is running on Mac OS server, then you will be using execute shell command. So basically you will be using execute shell. I'm using Windows for recording as of now, so execute Windows batch command. Let's click on save and let's click on build now. Okay, let's click on proceed. So it's running our build. So step number 1 is npm install. It is downloading all the dev dependencies. So it's done. Now it's running our Playwright test. So npx Playwright test, going to test folder, running the example.spec.js file, running on Chromium. And when I say headed, okay, so it says error project Chromium not found. Okay, let's see. So for this, we will go back to our configuration file, playwright.config.js. Let's open this with Notepad++. It's already available. Let's go back and check what went wrong. Project -chromium -headed not found. Okay, so we did a small mistake. Project demo. See, when we executed this cd command, right, what happened? It went to the Playwright demo folder, which is the actual folder wherever test is available. When I executed the second command, it is running on the parent folder, which is still project GitHub, which is basically it's cloning here, right? So it's trying to find that configuration in the home folder. So what we will do, we will execute the cd command again so that it should reach till that particular location. So just to quickly fix this, option number 1, I can keep this in this particular Windows batch command, or again I can execute the cd command first. And now let's click on save. Let's click on build now again, and let's wait. So first is npm install, then it will install Playwright. Yes, done. Now you can see it went to the actual folder, which is Playwright demo. It executed npx Playwright test, headed mode. Okay, now it says running 2 tests using 1 worker. Why 2 tests? Because example.spec.js file which I showed you, right, it have 2 tests. I will show you that as well. Now it started on Chromium. This is our test 1 completed, and now it will again run the second test. Yes, almost done. Yeah, 2 tests pass and success. So this example.js file, if you go to, sorry, not pages, test, if you open this, so this is our test 1. This is a very sample test, a basic sample test where it checks the title should contains Playwright. And this is another test where it checks the get started link. The get started link should be visible. Now it doesn't matter whether you have simple test, complex test. What Jenkins is doing, go to that folder, run this particular file, run in this browser, and run in the headed mode. So this is part 1, where we clone the repository into our local workspace first manually, then we execute it. Now in the second part, I will show you how you can directly pull this repository and run the same thing. Just one minor change you have to do and we're good to go. And guys, during this practice, if you face any issue, feel free to reach out to me. You can let me know what issues you are getting in the comment section. Now in order to directly pull this, I will click on the code and I will get this cloning URL. So I copied this. You can use SSH or HTTPS. I'm using HTTPS. Now go back, configure. Now for part 2, just you need to mention the source code management. So click on this Git option. It will ask you for the repository URL. So we already copied this. Let me copy one more time, and I will mention this repository URL. If you have a private repository, make sure you provide the credentials. Since it's a public repository, credentials not required. Yeah. But let's say if you're working for a company, you already have organization, then private repositories, you want to clone a particular private repository, credentials are required. You can add the credentials from here. Now the most important part, which branch. So still when you work with Jenkins, it will give you master branch. But with GitHub, you will see mostly main branch, but still if you're using master branch name, please mention the master branch. In our case, it's main branch. So I will change this to main branch. Now all this are not required. We don't need to do CD part. Okay, you just need to mention npm install, npx playwright install, and this also not required. Same thing, but this time you will notice it will first clone the repository. So it's running our build. Yes, it's doing this npm install. This is just a warning part. You can skip this warning. Now it executed npx playwright test, and now within few seconds your test will be executed. Now notice here it says started by Mukesh, running as system, and this is where it is downloading that particular repository. So I told, right, when it clones in a specific directory. So in my case, it goes to C drive, users, this username, .jenkins, which is a hidden folder, workspace, and the playwright GitHub. So this is where our code is getting cloned and the test is running. So 2 tests executed fastly, and yeah, done. So this is how you can run playwright test using Jenkins. Right now I'm running on the local system, but let's say if you have multiple agents connected, make sure you have agents connected to Jenkins, and whatever settings I'm telling, this has to be done on the agent part. Now third part is optional but good to have. So what is happening, guys? Right now if I have to run another spec file, for example, maybe I want to run this Windows handle spec.js, login.spec, login application, page load, or wait for. Every time I have to go to my Jenkins job and I have to keep changing the files. Option number 1, I create multiple jobs. Job 1 is for this, job 2 is for this, job 3 is for this. And the second option would be we can parameterize. When I say parameterize, I will be getting one option that which file you want to run. Do you want to run example.spec.file? You want to run login file, you want to run regression, depends what is your file name. You can pass parameters. Now how to pass parameters? Let me show you. So this is part 3, part 1 locally done, part 2 through GitHub is done. Now part 3 is Jenkins with GitHub, but this time we are going to configure our job with parameters. Very small thing, and how to create parameters, different type of parameters. So in case if you please pause video. So now you will see one option called this project is parameterized, right? Click on this and says create parameters. So choice parameter, active parameters, choice reactive parameters. What I want is simple choice parameter. When I say choice parameter, it's kind of a drop down. For example, I want to give spec file. This is the parameter name I'm giving. You can give any name. Make sure you just use the same name while mentioning your steps. I'm using a spec file. And now you can give all the choices in the next line. For example, I want to run this particular file, which is example.spec.js. I will give one more option that user can run this particular spec file as well. And in the description you can say please provide which spec file you want to run. Now this part is hard coded now. Now we created parameter. So come back to your step. Instead of hard coding this, you can give the parameter. Percentage, parameter name and the percentage. So if user select this particular option, example.spec.js, it will be replaced here with this parameter. And if selects other one will be replaced here. The same thing you can do for project as well. Let's say right now this job is running with Chromium. Let's say you want to run with Firefox. Let's say you want to run with WebKit. You want to run with any other browser. You will keep changing this, right? So if I don't add this as a parameter, every time I have to come and change my job. So I can create one more parameter. Again, I'm using choice parameter because it looks good. It looks as a drop down. But if you want to give string parameters, you need to type. I'm creating one more choice parameter called browser. Now, please guys, remember, we have certain names which you have to use. For Chrome, you have to use Chromium. For Firefox, Firefox. For WebKit, WebKit. And if you want to use all, you will use all. So I will select these options. Chromium, Firefox, WebKit and all. Again, I can write description. Please select which browser you want to use for execution. Now once you're done, copy this. Instead of hard coding, percentage and the parameter name. Just check once what will this percentage works with Linux and Mac as well. If not, then you have to use $ symbol. Now click on save. Now notice the moment I save, now I'm getting build with parameters. Initially only the build option was coming. Now since I added 2 parameters, it says build with parameters. Now it says which file you want to run and which project you want to select. So whatever file you will select, it will take this particular options and it will run. So if I build again one last time, it will start the build. Okay, wait. Yeah, this one, 7 number. Yes, it's pulling. It's cloned the repository, it's executed npm install. And perfect. See, it replaced here. What we selected is getting replaced here with the actual values, and it will run the rest. So that's a quick video about Jenkins with Playwright. I'm using Playwright with JavaScript, so I have performed this step. But in case we're using Python, Java or C#, the more or less steps will be same. Okay, it got failed. Let's see. Okay, see, again I did a small mistake. If you notice this command, Chromium, there's no space and directly says hyphen headed. So it is not able to understand what is this project, Chromium hyphen headed. So a small space we need to add so that it should consider this as a second option. Log and make the changes accordingly. Still loading, and all the commands that I'm using is this headed browser, but let's say if you want to use any other options, these are the list of options that you can pass. So I can come back, see this one is space, so add a space, save. Yeah, it triggered. It will take a few seconds and it will start. Yeah, same thing. So let it run. Let me quickly revise what exactly we did. Step number 1, Jenkins should be configured. Step number 2, your test should be available. Once that part is ready, we will start executing these steps. npm install, which will basically install all the dev dependencies. Second command, npx playwright install, it will install Playwright. If Playwright is not installed, it will take couple of seconds. It will download the latest browsers and everything. Then we are running a specific file. You can replace this with any file that you want to run. You can give any other folder if you have a different folder. If you want to run on the different projects, you can change the project, which is basically the browsers. If you want on the headless, just remove it. But if you want to run in the headed mode, just mention --headed. Step 3, we have seen in case if you want to pass parameters, how to pass parameters. For Windows, I'm using %. Just check once with if this % is not working with Linux and Mac, then you have to use $. So this job is also done, and this is with parameters. Yes, all these parameters got replaced. Now before we end this video, I want to highlight a couple of things. Not this one. Not this one too. One second. Yes. So when you do this first time, this is how the installation process will look like. The moment you say npx playwright install, in case Playwright is not available, the latest browsers are not available, this is how it will download. So it downloaded latest version of Chromium, latest version of Firefox, latest version of WebKit, and then will execute. This process only happens when you don't have browsers, when you don't have Playwright installed. Okay, so that's all about this video. I hope this video will help you a lot when you start working with Jenkins. But in case you're using any other CI server, the concept will remain same, your steps will remain same, only the tool UI will change and certain options will change. So if you like this video, please share with your friends and colleagues. And if you need more videos on Playwright or on Jenkins, let me in the comment section. And see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care.